The stars were calm that night, if such a thing could be said of the endless void. Beyond the orbit of Saturn, the human diplomatic vessel Aurora's Light drifted in silence, its silver hull gleaming softly under the reflection of distant starlight. Inside, Ambassador Elara Hayes stood before the main observation window, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes lost in the beauty of space. She had been chosen by Earth's council not because she was the strongest or most political, but because she was kind. She believed, more than anyone, that humanity could finally find peace among the stars. The year was 7892 AD, and humanity had spread across more than 100 systems, yet even as they grew stronger, they sought diplomacy instead of domination. The council had sent Elara to the newly discovered civilization known as the Valar Dominion, a proud, old race said to have existed for 1,000,000 years. Her mission was simple: open communication, establish peace, and show them that humanity was not a threat. The Aurora's Light glided toward the Valar border, escorted by a small fleet of 3 defense ships that carried no weapons of attack, only shields and hope. Inside the bridge, Captain Jonas Reeve spoke gently. "Ma'am, Valar Beacon has acknowledged our message. They've opened a channel." Elara turned, smoothing the soft folds of her silver envoy robe. "Patch it through, Captain." The hollow screen shimmered to life, revealing the image of a tall alien with crystal blue skin and eyes that shone like molten gold. His armor was elegant yet cold, every curve of metal etched with ancient markings. "I am Lord Sevalk of the Valar Dominion," the alien said. His tone was deep, proud, and distant. "You trespass on our sacred border. Explain yourself, human." Elara smiled calmly, her voice gentle. "I am Elara Hayes, envoy of Earth. We come in peace. We wish to open dialogue and—" "Silence," Sevalk interrupted, his golden eyes narrowing. "Your kind spreads like a disease across the stars. We have watched you consume worlds. There is no peace in you." Elara did not flinch. "Then let me prove you wrong." The alien paused for a moment. His expression softened, and only for a heartbeat, before the signal suddenly cut. The bridge filled with uneasy silence. Captain Reeve looked at her. "Do you think they'll listen?" Elara smiled faintly. "Hope is the only weapon we need, Captain." Hours passed. The ship waited, suspended between fear and faith. Then, without warning, a massive shadow appeared in the distance, a Valar warship, 10 times the size of Aurora's Light, emerging from the void like a dark moon. Its energy signature was enormous. Its design was ancient, majestic, and terrifying. "Contact, Valar Dreadnought, class designation Obsidian Crown," cried the sensor officer. Elara stepped forward. "Open a channel again." Static filled the air, then Lord Sevalk's face reappeared. His tone was colder now. "Human envoy, our council rejects your presence. You stand as proof of your species' arrogance." Elara frowned slightly. "We have done nothing but ask for peace." "Please, you come with ships," Sevalk hissed. "You come with fleets even when you claim peace. Do you think we are blind? We remember what the Terrans did to the Drakthor, to the Elysians. You call it defense, we call it conquest." Elara's voice trembled for the first time. "That was not conquest. Those wars were survival. We only fought to protect our colonies, our children. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to—" The connection cut again, and then the Valar Dreadnought fired. The beam was pure white, a column of energy that tore through the void and struck Aurora's Light before anyone could react. The shields flared, cracked, and collapsed. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring. "Direct hit! We've lost stabilizers!" shouted the pilot. Elara fell to her knees, gripping the railing as the ship began to spin. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Captain Reeve's voice broke through the chaos. "We're losing life support." "Evac pods," another blast struck. The ship's hull split like glass. Elara stood, barely able to breathe. "Send a final message to Earth," she said softly. Tell them we tried." The message was transmitted, a faint signal carrying her last words, before the Aurora's Light disintegrated in a silent flash of light. On Earth, the signal arrived 14 hours later. In the central command hall of the United Terran Council, the room fell utterly silent as the hollow recording flickered to life, showing the moment the Valar beam struck the ship. Then came Elara's voice, calm and broken. "Tell them. We tried." The hall was filled with stunned silence. Even the hum of the machines seemed to stop. High Chancellor Malik Wren closed his eyes. He had known Ilara since their days in the academy. She had believed in peace when everyone else had given up. She went unarmed, he whispered, and they killed her. The council members exchanged grim looks. One of them, Admiral Cale Draven, stood up. He was tall, stern, his gray uniform marked by decades of service. His voice was like thunder breaking the silence. They killed our envoy, he said slowly. That was not war. That was murder. Malik looked at him. Admiral, Earth cannot afford. Draven's eyes burned with quiet fury. No, Chancellor. The galaxy cannot afford to forget this. Far beyond Earth, in the deep docks of Luna Prime, slept a fleet that had not been seen in centuries. The Titan-class warships built during the Great Expansion were legends, each one a floating continent of metal and fire. Their names were etched in history: Erebus, Vanguard, Celestia, Eternal Flame, and the flagship Sol Invictus. They had been sealed away under the peace accords, forbidden to launch unless Earth itself was under existential threat. Now, as the recording of Ilara's last words played again across every colony, every station, every home, humanity's heart turned from sorrow to something else. Something older. Something that had once burned bright when the species fought for survival among the stars. Rage, not born of hatred, but of heartbreak. That night, in the cold light of Luna's dawn, Admiral Cale Draven stood on the command deck of Sol Invictus. He placed his hand on the glass overlooking the massive warship. Rows of engineers and officers moved below, preparing systems that had slept for centuries. Beside him stood Commander Isha Vale, Ilara's closest friend. Her face was pale but resolute. "Do we have authorization?" she asked quietly. Draven nodded slowly. The council didn't say yes, but they didn't say no either. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where Earth hung like a blue jewel. "They took our envoy of peace and gave us only silence. We will answer." Isha lowered her eyes. Ilara believed in peace. Draven's voice softened. "And because of her, the stars will remember who we are." Across the colonies, the ancient beacons of Earth's navy began to awaken. Massive orbital gates reactivated. Shipyards that had long been silent came alive again. Children who had grown up under the shadow of peace watched as fleets of light rose from the skies, not in conquest, but in mourning. A single message echoed across the Terran networks, broadcast to every world, every moon, every ship. They killed the envoy. The Titans awaken. In the deep of space, at the edge of Velar territory, 1,000 Velar warships gathered, unaware of what was coming. Their commanders discussed among themselves the victory over the naive humans. "They will fear us now," said one. "They will never enter our stars again." But the universe had gone quiet. Too quiet. Because at that very moment, something vast was emerging from the dark. The void rippled, bent, and opened, as the Sol Invictus and its Titan fleet exited subspace. Their hulls glowed like suns, their energy cores pulsing with unimaginable power. A voice echoed across the stars, transmitted in every Velar frequency. "This is Admiral Cale Draven of the United Terran Fleet. You destroyed the vessel Aurora's Light and murdered our envoy, Ilara Hayes. You refused peace. You have chosen war." The Velar command ships began to power their weapons, but the Titans did not wait. Draven raised his hand. "For Ilara," he whispered, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble as humanity's answer to betrayal began. The silence before battle was deep, the kind of silence that made the stars themselves seem to hold their breath. Admiral Cale Draven stood on the bridge of Sol Invictus, the flagship of the Titan fleet, staring at the holographic map hovering before him. Red symbols marked the Velar Armada, thousands of ships arranged in elegant curved formations. Blue icons marked the Terran Titans, only 12 in total, yet each one larger than any vessel in Velar's history. Beside Draven stood Commander Isha Vale, her eyes fixed on the same display. She had not slept in 2 days. The image of Ilara Hayes, her old friend, still haunted her every thought. "She would have told us not to do this," Isha said softly. Draven's jaw tightened. "I know. Then why are we here?" He looked out into the dark where the stars glittered like cold fires. "Because peace died with her," he replied. "And until they remember what they did, peace cannot live again." The Sol Invictus floated in front of its fleet. 11 Titans following close behind, their engines glowing faintly blue. Each ship was built for defense, not destruction, but each carried the strength to move mountains and crack moons if commanded. Human engineers had designed them during the Great Expansion era to protect humanity from extinction. Now, after centuries of silence, they were awake again, and the galaxy trembled. Captain Arlen Miro, commander of the Titan Eternal Flame, reported through the channel. All systems green, Admiral. Shields stable. Energy cores at full charge, Draven nodded. Status of the Valar fleet? Still holding formation, sir, replied the tactical officer. They seem unsure. Draven's lips curved into a small, sad smile. Good, they should be. He turned to his communications officer. Send one last message to their command. Give them a chance to stand down. The communication beam was sent across space, a simple, calm signal that carried Draven's voice. To the Valar Dominion, this is Admiral Cale Draven of the United Terran Fleet. You destroyed our envoy's ship and took her life. This is your last chance to surrender and answer for what you have done. Refuse, and we will defend our people with full force. The message echoed for minutes through the Valar channels. No answer came. Then, finally, the Valar fleet responded, but not with words. A massive energy wave surged from their flagship, spreading across the dark. Their formation shifted into attack position. Commander Isha Vale closed her eyes. So that's their answer. Draven gave a long, quiet sigh. Then history will remember this day. He raised his hand. All ships, defensive pattern. Do not fire first. Record everything. Let the galaxy see who struck first again. The Valar dreadnoughts advanced, their engines flaring like suns. Thousands of smaller cruisers followed, forming streams of light that filled the void. From afar, it looked like a storm made of stars. The first shots came, beams of violet energy that streaked across the emptiness, hitting the Terran shields. The Titans trembled but held strong. Shields stable, reported the officer. No structural damage. Maintain position, Draven ordered calmly. Do not answer fire. The second wave came stronger, dozens of heavy strikes slamming into the fleet. Sparks erupted across the decks, but the Titans did not move. The Valar fleet hesitated. For the first time in millennia, they were unsure. Their enemy was not fighting back. Then Admiral Draven gave a quiet command. Transmit this to all Valar channels. His voice went out again across space. You have attacked unprovoked Arn again. We will now defend ourselves. He lowered his hand. Fire. The Sol Invictus lit up like a second sun. Massive energy cannons dormant for centuries came alive with a roar of power. The first volley crossed the void in a burst of light, striking the lead Valar dreadnought. The impact was silent, but the explosion that followed burned like a newborn star. The shockwave rippled through the enemy formation. Valar ships scattered, confused. Some tried to retreat, others charged forward in panic. The other Titans joined in, Eternal Flame, Vanguard, Celestia, Erebus, each unleashing energy beams that cut through enemy shields like waves through mist. Commander Isha watched, her heart heavy. She whispered, Elara, if only they had listened. Draven's face was expressionless, but his eyes told another story, not triumph, but sorrow. They will listen now, he murmured. Far away, on Earth and across the colonies, billions watched the live transmission. Every citizen, every miner, every child, all saw the light of their fleet shining in the darkness. No one cheered. There was no joy in what they saw, only quiet pride and deep sadness. A mother whispered to her child, That's for Elara. And the child, barely old enough to understand, whispered back, she wanted peace. Yes, the mother said softly, and this is what peace costs when others destroy it. Hours passed. The battle stretched across 3 systems. The Valar forces were vast, but the Titans were unstoppable. Their armor absorbed hits that would have vaporized planets. Their energy reserves seemed endless. Still, the human fleet did not aim for extermination. Draven's orders were clear: disable, not destroy. Every time a Valar ship went dark, rescue beacons were automatically sent to allow survivors to escape. Record their surrender attempts, Draven said to his crew. We'll need proof. The galaxy must know that we gave mercy, even when we were denied it. But the Valar Dominion was not yet finished. From the shadows of their home system, something massive emerged, A vessel larger than any other, its hull made of pure obsidian crystal. Its energy signature dwarfed even the Titans. Commander Isha's breath caught. "What is that?" The sensors struggled to read it. Finally, the computer translated the name carved on its hull. The Celestial Throne. Draven's eyes narrowed. Their flagship. As it came closer, the Velar communication channel opened again. Lord Sevok's voice filled the air, deep and proud. "Humans, your weapons are strong, but you are children who do not understand the stars. You bring war where you were offered warning. Leave now and perhaps your ashes will be spared." Draven stood tall. "You killed our envoy when she came with no weapons, no threats. We came with peace and you answered with destruction. You call us children, yet you act like frightened elders who destroy what they fear." Sevok's golden eyes burned with pride. "Your envoy's weakness proved your danger. A race that hides behind peace always returns with fire." Draven looked down almost sadly. "Then I will show you how bright that fire burns when it protects, not destroys." He raised his hand. "Target Celestial Throne. Prepare wave displacement cannons." The stars dimmed as the Sol Invictus and two other Titans focused their energy cores. The air inside the ship seemed to vibrate with silent thunder. "Charge complete," reported the weapons officer. "Ready to fire on command." Draven took a deep breath. Fire. 3 streams of pure white energy lanced out, merging into one as they struck the Celestial Throne. The Velar flagship's shields flared, bending the light around it. For a moment it seemed the attack had failed. Then cracks appeared, bright glowing fissures spreading like lightning across its hull. The enemy ship shuddered violently. Explosions rippled along its sides, but it did not fall. Instead, the Velar vessel unleashed a counterattack so powerful that the Sol Invictus shook from bow to stern. "Shields down to 40%. cried the engineer. "Hold steady," Draven commanded. "Divert auxiliary power." The two fleets clashed like storms colliding, light against shadow, grief against pride. Hours turned into endless minutes of struggle. The Titan fleet held its ground, protecting each other, never striking at planets or fleeing ships. Humanity fought not for conquest, but for memory, for Ilara, and for the meaning of peace itself. Finally, as the Celestial Throne's energy faded, Lord Sevok's voice came again, no longer proud but weary. "Why do you fight so hard, human? For revenge?" Draven stared at the screen. "No," he said quietly. "For hope. Because once a woman believed you could change. And we owe her that much." Sevok was silent for a long time. Then the connection ended. Moments later, the massive Velar flagship powered down. Its weapons went dark. Across the field, other Velar ships began to follow. One by one, their lights dimmed. The battle was over. The void was silent again. Commander Isha looked out at the stars. "It's over," she whispered. Draven nodded slowly. "Yes, but it doesn't feel like victory." She turned toward him. "What now?" He looked toward the distant planet, the Velar homeworld. "Now, we rebuild, and maybe one day we'll send another envoy." Isha's eyes softened. "Do you think they'll listen then?" Draven's voice was calm, almost tender. "They will. Because this time, the stars themselves will tell them the story of a woman who came in peace, and of the price they paid for silencing her." In the halls of the Velar capital, Lord Sevok stood alone before the grand window of his palace. The stars outside were quiet, peaceful, the kind of peace he had destroyed. For the first time in his long life, he felt something heavy inside him, regret. He whispered to himself, "Ilara Hayes." You were right. Back on Earth, a statue was raised in the central garden of the United Terran Council. It showed a woman reaching toward the stars, her hand open in peace. The plaque below read, "Ilara Hayes, the Envoy of Peace." She believed in hope, even when the stars turned cold. Admiral Draven and Commander Isha stood before it, silent. "Do you think she'd forgive us?" Isha asked. Draven looked up at the statue's calm face. "She already has." Because she knew, even in war, humanity's heart still beats for peace. And as the sun rose over Earth, the hour won. The war had ended, but peace, as always, was harder to win than any battle. The Titan fleet had returned home to Earth, their great engines now silent. In orbit, the once feared ships rested like sleeping giants, their hulls marked by the scars of war. Across the planet, people gathered in remembrance, not to celebrate victory but to mourn those who had been lost and to honor the woman who had begun it all. Elara Hayes, Earth's envoy of peace. Her name had spread beyond human borders. The message she carried, though silenced by violence, had now echoed across the galaxy. Even among the Valar, stories began to rise about the woman who spoke with stars in her eyes. On the Valar homeworld, the cities were quiet. For the first time in their long history, the Valar Dominion had suffered defeat. Their people, proud, ancient, unyielding, now faced questions they had never asked before. Lord Seavalk stood on the balcony of his palace, staring at the horizon where twin suns rose over silver towers. The war had ended weeks ago, but his mind was still trapped in the voice of Admiral Draven and the memory of Ilara's calm words. He remembered her voice from the first meeting. "We come in peace." Simple words. But they had carried a strength he had mistaken for weakness. Now he knew the truth. His people had destroyed the messenger of peace, and in doing so, had invited a storm they could never hope to control. A knock came at his door. "Enter," Seavalk said softly. A young Valar soldier stepped in, his armor dull, his face uncertain. "My lord, the council awaits your presence. They wish to discuss the terms with the Terrans." Seavalk turned. "Terms," he repeated. The word felt heavy on his tongue. "Once we gave orders. Now we receive them. How swiftly pride becomes a burden." The soldier hesitated. "The people are confused, my lord. They ask if we will fight again." Seavalk's golden eyes dimmed. "No," he said after a pause. "There will be no more war. Not while I still have breath." The soldier bowed and left quietly. Seavalk looked out again at the sky. Two birds crossed the horizon, small and white, moving together through the morning light. "Perhaps," he whispered, "this is what she wanted all along." Meanwhile, on Earth, the council gathered inside the great dome of the United Terran Assembly. Holographic projections of galaxies spun above the round table, showing the new boundaries and territories that were once lines of conflict. Chancellor Malik Ren stood at the center, addressing the delegates. "The Valar Dominion has officially requested peace talks. Their fleets have withdrawn, and their leader, Lord Seavalk, has sent a personal letter of apology." Murmurs filled the chamber. Admiral Kael Draven sat silently at the far end of the table. He looked older than he had a few months ago, not in body, but in spirit. War had a way of aging the heart. One delegate asked, "Can we trust them again?" Draven's deep voice cut through the noise. "Trust is not given, it is built. But we must remember why we fought, not for revenge, but for peace." If Elara were here, she would say the same. The chamber fell silent at her name. Malik nodded. "Then let us honor her by doing what she could not finish." A week later, a small shuttle left Earth's orbit. Its hull bore no weapons, only the symbol of the Earth Council, a blue circle surrounded by stars. Inside it sat Admiral Draven and Commander Aisha Vale. Their mission, travel to the Valar homeworld for the first peace conference between the two civilizations. As the ship passed the moon and entered the deep void, Aisha turned toward Draven. "It feels strange," she said softly. "We're following the same path she did." Draven nodded. "Yes. But this time the stars remember her." The ship glided silently through the endless black. For a long while neither spoke. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Then Aisha said, "Do you think Seavalk will truly listen?" Draven's gaze was distant. "He will. Not because of us, but because of her. She changed him. Maybe not when she lived, but in the silence that followed." On the third day of travel, the shuttle entered Valar space. This time there were no fleets waiting, no weapons aimed. Instead, a single escort ship appeared, shining silver and blue, carrying the emblem of the Valar Council. "Admiral Draven," came a soft voice over the comm channel. "We welcome you in peace." Draven exchanged a glance with Aisha. Then he replied, "And we accept your welcome in the same spirit." For the first time in recorded history, the voice of a Valar commander sounded not proud or cold, but humble. When the shuttle landed on the Valar capital, crowds of both Valar citizens and Terran observers filled the Grand Plaza. The air shimmered with soft light as banners of both worlds fluttered together in the wind. Lord Sev'Alc stood at the steps of the Grand Hall, his golden eyes calm. When Draven and Isha approached, he bowed his head slightly, a gesture no Valar leader had ever shown to another species before. "Admiral Draven," Sev'Alc said, his deep voice steady. "Welcome to our world. We owe your people more than we can ever repay." Draven studied him quietly. "I did not come for repayment, Lord Sev'Alc. I came for peace." Sev'Alc nodded. "Then perhaps peace can begin here, where it first died." Together they walked into the hall. The conference lasted for many hours. There were moments of tension, of silence, and of slow understanding. Words replaced weapons. Apologies replaced accusations. The Valar agreed to open trade and knowledge exchange. In return, Earth promised to share the technology that had made their peaceful colonies thrive: energy fields, medicine, education systems. But at the heart of every discussion was one name: Ilara Hayes. Sev'Alc insisted that her memory be honored not just on Earth, but across both civilizations. "She was the bridge," he said simply. "And bridges are meant to connect, not divide." When the conference ended, the leaders of both sides stood together before the gathered crowd. Sev'Alc turned to the people and said, "The Valar Dominion once believed strength was found in conquest. But we were wrong. True strength is found in restraint, in forgiveness, and in the courage to trust again." Then Draven stepped forward. His voice was calm but powerful. "We came here not to remind you of the past, but to build a future where no envoy dies for peace again. Let the stars witness that from this day forward, we walk together." The plaza erupted in soft applause, not the loud cheer of celebration, but the quiet sound of relief. That evening, after the crowds had gone, Sev'Alc led Draven and Isha to a quiet garden behind the Grand Hall. There, among white flowers that glowed faintly under the twin moons, stood a small statue. It was of a woman, her hand extended, her eyes gentle, looking up toward the stars. Isha's breath caught. "That's her," she whispered. Sev'Alc nodded. "Yes. We built it in her honor. We wanted to remember her not as an enemy, but as a teacher." Draven stepped closer. The statue was simple, yet beautiful. The base was engraved in both human and Valar script. Ilara Hayes. She spoke of peace and the stars listened. For a long moment no one spoke. The wind moved softly through the garden, carrying the scent of the glowing flowers. Finally, Draven said, "You've done well, Lord Sev'Alc." Sev'Alc's expression softened. "No, she did well. We only learned from her silence." Days turned into weeks. New treaties were signed. Joint colonies were planned. For the first time in recorded galactic history, two civilizations that had once stood on the edge of annihilation began to build together. Commander Aisha spent her days teaching young Valar scholars about human history and peacekeeping. She found comfort in sharing Ilara's words, her belief that understanding was stronger than any weapon. One evening, as she looked up at the twin moons, she felt a strange calmness. Perhaps, she thought, Ilara's dream was finally coming true. Months later, a new ship was launched from Earth, a diplomatic vessel named Aurora's Legacy. It was designed not for war, but for connection. Its mission, to travel to distant galaxies and share the story of peace between humans and Valar. Before launch, Admiral Draven stood before the ship with Commander Aisha and the Council. "This ship," Draven said, "carries no weapons, only our story. Let it remind the stars that peace is never weakness, it is courage." As Aurora's Legacy lifted into the sky, Sunlight glimmered off its hull, and for a moment it looked like a falling star rising backward, back into the heavens where it belonged. Far away on the Valar homeworld, Lord Sevalk watched the launch through a live feed. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. Beside him stood a young Valar student who asked, "My lord, do you think the humans will forget what we did?" Sevalk shook his head. "No, and they shouldn't. But neither will they hate us. That is their strength. And now, perhaps, it will be ours too." He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Alara Hayes. Your voice still lives in the hearts of those who listen." And so the war that began with fear ended with understanding. The envoy who died in silence had awakened a harmony that spread across worlds. Years later, when children of both races looked up at the night sky, they were told the story of the woman who believed in peace, and of how her dream changed the stars themselves. Her statue still stood both on Earth and Valar, glowing softly at night. Beneath it, the same words were written in both languages. She came in peace, and through her, we found it. The Titans returned home, their engines dimming as they entered orbit once more. The stars, for the first time in a long while, seemed calm again, but across the galaxy, the name Alara Hayes would never be forgotten, the woman who tried to bring peace, and the human fleet that proved the strength of her dream. The galaxy trembled in silence after the broadcast of Arlen's death. Every world that had traded with Earth, every civilization that had once underestimated humanity, now watched with unease. The message was clear: Earth was coming. And this time it wasn't with words. The Earth fleet, a shining wall of steel and light, had moved beyond the borders of Sol. Millions of ships, each bearing the crest of the United Earth Alliance, glided through the void. Behind them followed smaller fleets, civilian ships turned war machines, all guided by one emotion: grief. At the center of this armada stood the flagship Eden's Wrath. Captain Lyra Hale stood at its command bridge, staring into the swirling light of hyperspace. Her face was calm, but her eyes were oceans of sadness. She had been Arlen's closest friend since childhood. They had dreamed of peace together, believed in unity, and now, all she had left was vengeance tempered by duty. "Captain," said Commander Idris softly, "the fleet is ready to exit hyperspace at your command. The target system awaits." Lyra nodded slowly. "Prepare all divisions. No one fires until I give the order. We are not here for destruction. We are here for justice." A silence followed her words, but every soul aboard understood what she meant. Earth would never attack blindly. But if peace was broken, they would fight with everything they had. The Valoran Council, the same rulers who had ordered Arlen's execution, gathered in panic. Their war room was filled with the blue glow of holograms and the hum of worried voices. "The humans are advancing faster than we expected," one council member shouted. "They've already disabled our border defenses without even landing troops." "They're using non-lethal EMP waves," another reported. "They could have destroyed our ships, but they didn't. Why are they sparing us?" Emperor Kor, the Valoran leader, clenched his claws in frustration. "Because they want us to fear them. They want us to see how easily they could crush us." "This is psychological warfare," one old advisor spoke quietly. "Or perhaps it is mercy, the kind we never showed." Kor slammed his fist on the table. "Mercy? They send millions of ships into our space, and you call that mercy?" But deep inside, even Kor knew the truth. Humanity could have sent weapons of annihilation. Instead, they sent warnings, disabling systems without killing. Still, he could not risk appearing weak. Pride and fear clouded his judgment, and that pride would soon lead to ruin. Back aboard the Eden's Wrath, Lyra received a transmission. It was from Admiral Kyren, the Supreme Commander of the United Earth Fleet. "Lyra," his voice came through, low and steady. "Intel confirms the Valoran Council is fortified on their capital world, Vathor Prime. No surrender message. No apology. Only defensive preparation." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Then they've chosen their path. Are you ready to lead the vanguard?" "I was ready the moment they killed him," she whispered. The Admiral gave a solemn nod. "Remember, Arlen stood for peace. Do not let rage erase his dream." "I won't," Lyra said, "but they must understand what their actions cost." When the fleet emerged from hyperspace near Vathor Prime, the system's twin suns lit their metal hulls like fire. Valoran warships surrounded the planet 1,000 strong. Their formation was tight, their weapons glowing. The humans faced them with discipline, silent, steady, unstoppable. Open wideband communication, Lyra commanded. Her voice echoed across both fleets. People of Vathor Prime, this is Captain Lyra Hale of the United Earth Alliance. You have taken our envoy Arlen Voss, an unarmed messenger of peace, and ended his life. You were given chances to confess, to apologize, to seek forgiveness. You chose silence. Now we stand at your gates not as invaders but as witnesses to your choices. What happens next depends on you. For a long moment no reply came. Then the Valoran fleet opened fire. The stars turned white. The first barrage struck the human shields, but none broke. The fleet absorbed the energy, redirected it through magnetic barriers, and responded not with destruction, but with control. Human ships launched ion fields, disabling enemy engines without damaging life systems. Valoran ships drifted helplessly, powerless but alive. The galaxy watched the live stream in awe. Billions of eyes saw humanity holding the line, not as monsters but as beings of terrifying restraint. Disable, don't destroy. Lyra reminded her officers again and again. We show them our strength, not our hatred. Still, her heart ached. Each pulse of light reminded her of Arlen's laughter, his words about hope, his dreams for peace among the stars. When the last Valoran cruiser was silenced, Lyra spoke to her crew. Prepare the descent. We're going to Vathor Prime. The capital city shined below like a jewel wrapped in storm clouds. The humans descended, their ships casting long shadows across the great towers of the Valoran government. As the Eden's Wrath landed outside the council palace, thousands of armored human soldiers stepped onto alien soil. Their banners bore the symbol of Earth, a blue sphere surrounded by silver wings. At their head walked Lyra, her uniform spotless, her expression unreadable. The palace gates opened slowly, and inside stood Emperor Kor, trembling but defiant. You come to conquer us? Kor asked bitterly. Will you destroy our world as revenge? Lyra met his gaze. No, we came for truth, Kor scoffed. Truth, you mean judgment. You humans pretend to be noble, but your armada says otherwise. She stepped closer, her voice steady. Arlen came to you unarmed, speaking of friendship. You captured him. You silenced him. And yet even now humanity has not silenced you. That is the difference between us. The room fell silent. The Valoran guards lowered their weapons. Kor's confidence faltered as he saw the humanity in her eyes, the strength mixed with sorrow. You don't want to kill us, he said slowly. No, Lyra said. We want you to remember. She handed him a small device. It projected a hologram of Arlen, his last transmission. His final words echoed through the chamber. If they fear us, we must teach them understanding. If they hate us, we must show them patience. And if they harm us, we must still remind them we are not monsters. Kor's eyes widened. He heard Arlen's gentle tone, his unbroken hope. The weight of guilt began to crush him. I ordered it, he confessed weakly. We feared what humanity might become. We thought if we ended one man, the galaxy would remain safe. Lyra looked at him sadly. And now you see the truth. You didn't stop peace, you ended it. She turned away, signaling her soldiers. Take him into custody. There will be no execution. He will face judgment before the Galactic Council. That night, as the human fleet maintained orbit, the stars seemed quiet once more. Lyra stood at the observation deck watching Vathor Prime's surface glow beneath the moons. Commander Idris approached. You did it, Captain. The war is over. Lyra shook her head gently. No, Idris, the war ended when we chose not to destroy them. He nodded in respect. Arlen would have been proud. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but I still miss him. In that moment, she understood something deeper. Humanity's true power was not in weapons or fleets or fear, it was in choice. The choice to hold back when anger screamed for action. The choice to honor peace even after betrayal. As dawn rose over Vathor Prime, a new message was sent from Earth to every corner of the galaxy. We do not seek to rule. We seek to remember. Let this be the last war born of fear. And for the first time in many generations, the stars seemed at peace again. But somewhere, beyond known space, other eyes were watching. Other species were whispering about the humans, the species that could have destroyed but chose restraint. And in those whispers, the legend of Earth's Envoy was reborn. The galaxy had changed. Where once warships and fleets filled the void with menace, now ships of peace traveled side by side. Human and Velaran engineers worked together, building colonies that floated among the stars, shining like silver beacons. Trade routes opened, research stations thrived, and slowly, understanding replaced fear. Yet even in this new age, the memory of one woman remained at the heart of every effort. Elara Hayes, Earth's envoy of peace. On Earth, a new school had opened in her name, the Elara Hayes Academy for Diplomacy and Exploration. Children from across human and alien civilizations came to learn not only history and science, but empathy, communication, and the art of solving conflict without violence. Commander Isha Vale walked through the halls one morning, her eyes bright with pride. Children laughed in different languages, yet somehow understood one another perfectly. A young Velaran boy tugged at her sleeve. "Commander Vale, will you tell us about Elara Hayes?" Isha smiled. "Of course. But remember, Elara wasn't a hero because she fought. She was a hero because she believed in peace when no one else did." The children listened, wide-eyed, imagining the brave woman who had crossed galaxies armed only with hope. Meanwhile, in the Valoran capital, Lord Seavalk watched the first joint scientific colony being built on one of their moons. Human architects and Velaran engineers worked side by side, creating structures that glowed under the twin suns. Seavalk could not stop thinking about the day the Titans had arrived in his system. The memory of Lyra Hale standing before him, strong yet calm, was still vivid. And he thought of Arlen Hayes. He walked through the corridors of his palace, stopping before the hologram of Arlen's last words. "If they harm us, we must still remind them we are not monsters." For centuries, the Valorans had measured strength through domination. Now, Seavalk realized, true strength lay in restraint, in understanding and in courage, the kind Arlen had shown. He touched the hologram softly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching us what we could not see ourselves." Back aboard the flagship Eden's Wrath, Lyra Hale looked out at the stars. Humanity had grown stronger, not through violence but through wisdom. Ships sailed freely now, carrying scientists, diplomats, and explorers. Her thoughts drifted to Arlen, to Elara. She could still remember his laughter, his hope for a galaxy where no envoy would die in silence. A transmission beeped. It was from Earth Command. "Captain Hale," the voice said, warm and calm. "We've received requests from distant systems. They've heard the story of your fleet, the story of the Envoy. Many want to join in peace to learn from humans." Lyra smiled softly. "Then her legacy grows. That's what she wanted all along." "Yes," the voice replied, "and you have carried it well." In the first joint council of the new interstellar alliance, humans and Velarans stood together. Leaders from other species, some who had observed Earth for decades, joined the meeting. The central chamber was filled with light from massive windows that looked out into space. Admiral Draven, now retired from active service, sat quietly at the back. He listened as young diplomats discussed trade agreements, scientific exchanges, and educational programs. A young Valoran delegate spoke. "The humans showed us the cost of ignoring peace. If we forget this lesson, it will be our loss. The envoy's name will guide our actions from now on." A human delegate nodded. "And we will continue to honor her memory, not just in words, but in deeds." Draven smiled faintly. Finally, he whispered to himself, "She would have been proud." Even in the distant systems that had once feared humanity, stories began to spread. Children drew pictures of Arlen and Elara, their ships sailing across the stars. Parents told bedtime stories about the envoy who came in peace and the humans who chose mercy over rage. On one distant moon, a small Valoran girl pointed to a map. "I want to go to Earth," she said. "I want to see where she lived." Her mother smiled. "One day you will. And when you go, remember why she came here. Remember the courage it took to speak hope to the stars." Years passed. The Titans, once dormant and feared, were now preserved as symbols of peace. The ships remained armed, but they were also floating academies, research vessels, and cultural centers. Children from multiple species could explore them. Learn and remember. In orbit above Earth, a new monument was unveiled, a statue larger than life, depicting Elara Hayes reaching out toward the stars, her hand open in friendship. People from dozens of civilizations gathered to witness it. Chancellor Malik Wren spoke at the unveiling. Alara Hayes taught us the greatest lesson any civilization can learn, that hope is stronger than hatred, and peace stronger than war. May her courage guide us forever. As the crowd fell silent, a gentle wind stirred. Children laughed and ran, pointing at the monument. Velerans and humans stood together, some holding hands, some bowing in respect. In that moment, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter. Not all stories were easy. Some Valoran leaders struggled to accept the change. Some humans remained wary. But the memory of the envoy and the courage of those who had followed her ideals created a chain reaction. Misunderstanding slowly transformed into dialogue. Fear gradually turned into trust. Even Emperor Kor, once proud and unyielding, dedicated his remaining years to fostering understanding between his people and humanity. In the quiet moments, he would visit the statue of Alara Hayes, leaving small gifts of glowing flowers from his world. "I cannot undo the past," he said quietly, "but I can ensure the future is brighter." In the deep reaches of space, the fleet that had once marched toward Vathor Prime now traveled for discovery. Scientists charted unknown systems. Diplomats spoke with new civilizations. And each ship carried a small symbol, an emblem of Earth, a silver wing surrounding a blue sphere, a reminder that even across the void, hope could travel further than hate. Lyra Hale stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking out at a nebula swirling with colors unseen by humans for millennia. Commander Idris joined her. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Yes," Lyra replied, "and it's ours to protect. Not with weapons, not with fear, but with wisdom, understanding and remembrance of what Arlen and Alara taught us." She smiled, eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "The galaxy may face darkness again, but as long as we remember them, we will never be lost." On Earth, every year on the anniversary of Alara's mission, schools, cities, and ships across the stars observed Envoy Day. Children placed flowers at her statues. Families told stories of courage, hope, and mercy. And somewhere, every observer felt that tiny spark of determination, the one Alara had carried across the void. Unarmed but unbroken, her statue stood tall against the winds, her hand reaching outward, her eyes toward infinity. A young Valoran boy, visiting Earth for the first time, looked up and whispered, "I want to be like her." A human girl beside him nodded. "Me too." And in that simple moment, the legacy of the Envoy lived on, not in fleets, not in power, not in vengeance, but in every heart willing to believe that even the smallest voice of peace could echo across galaxies. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. Humanity and Velerans grew together, joined by friendship, knowledge, and respect. The stars became a place not of fear, but of collaboration and exploration. The story of Alara Hayes, the envoy who came with no weapons, became a symbol. Across civilizations, people spoke her name with reverence, a reminder that courage was not always loud, and strength was not always measured in firepower. And far into the galaxy, the light of her dream still traveled. Each star, each world, each ship carrying hope across the cosmos whispered the same lesson. She came in peace, and through her, the universe learned to listen.